Okay, so I wanted to share something for a while. This is one of my Soviet Marx and Engels. It is from the Полное собрание сочинений, which is a full collection of works. I don't know how to correctly translate it. I just wanted to show you this little bit. Hopefully you were able to see. So this is a price, and it is stamped into the cover of the book. So you can't really scratch it off. You can't really like put stuff on it. It's still going to be visible. And also it would be illegal to do so for obvious reasons. So this would be the state price that was mandatory for many, many products, not only books. And this particular edition was published in 1986, a year before I was born. So it's not that old. So this custom of etching prices into products was pretty common throughout the entire Soviet period. And this was not just to show that this is the price and don't sell it more expensively. It was also for convenience, because then you wouldn't have to like remember it in case the paper label wore off. It was always there. And in case you wanted to remember how much you spent on any particular product, you wouldn't need a receipt. You'd just look at the product. And I remember seeing these little things when I was a child on different products, and just thinking to myself how ingenious that is, and how in the modern times we can have prices that vary so greatly for the same products. It was pretty hard for me to understand as a child, but now as an adult, of course I understand why this happens. It is because we have a free market that allows us to set up prices that are insanely marked up for any product. Isn't that wonderful? And the dirty, nasty Soviets did not want this. They wanted everybody to pay the same price for the product. How evil of them. But the thing I wanted to talk about today is something that I already kind of mentioned before. I don't remember which video it was. I made so many videos throughout the past few years. I can't even remember my own videos. But I think I did mention this book, which I highly, highly recommend. I haven't finished it still because I have no one to read it with, so it's not going to get finished. I only finish things that I read with my comrades. I did recommend this historian as well, and he speaks Russian, so if you don't speak Russian, you may not be able to understand, even though I think YouTube translates captions or subtitles, whatever you call them. So you may still attempt to watch him if you're interested. And he once talked about the fact that we would receive products in the USSR from the West that were the best of the best. They were the cream of the crop. And therefore, the Soviet people oftentimes had a very skewed understanding of what the products were like in the West. So this is part of the reason why a lot of the Soviet people kind of were vying for the Western wealth, because they had this assumption that everything in the West was better. And of course, this is what Western propaganda was very happy to support. So there were people who were paid to spread this kind of information. There were people who were smuggling products illegally, and those people would oftentimes like tell stories about how wonderful everything is in the West. And those people would not necessarily be spies. They would be like regular people who would be paid crumbs by the special services, maybe the CIA, maybe some European ones, to just exaggerate a little bit. Maybe they would be given discounts and wholesale prices for products just for saying that, see, in the West, we have everything. Everything's so abundant and wonderful. The quality is amazing. And in your Soviet Union, everything is so drab. Who cares if you have public housing, public transportation, public education, public healthcare? That's not important. What's important is the products, the lipstick, the jeans, all of this fun stuff, which you cannot live without. And I'm saying this so sarcastically is because this has become a running joke among the post-Soviet communists who were born in the post-Soviet countries. We oftentimes feel like the prior generations have betrayed us for jeans, literally, or gum, or any other kind of products. And of course, when we say that, we understand that the material conditions just built up in such a manner, and the ideology has developed in such a manner that it was inevitable. The collapse of the Soviet Union to some seemed inevitable. Whether it was or not is a very long conversation, which I'm not going to have right now. But blaming the individual people for their choices is, of course, not the course of action. So promoting asceticism and telling that, oh, the people were so bad for wanting things is just not the right course of action. But it is an important component to bear in mind when we dissect the Soviet history. And it is important to remember, just as Parenti was saying, that Soviet people actually had all of their basic needs met, and they usually would have more or less a meaningful job. And in such conditions, what do you want? You want relationships, you want meaningful hobbies, and you want things. You want material objects. You want vases or vases, as some people say. You want jewelry. You want beautiful things. That is because all of your other needs were met. Of course, you want something a little extra. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. That was one of the things that did contribute to the people's confusion and the people's lack of fighting back against the counter-revolution. As I speak to some of the people who have only now come to realize what happened in the 90s with the dissolution of the USSR, they admit that they didn't understand what was happening. They didn't understand what it was that they were losing because they did not have a clear idea of what capitalism is. And yes, that is a mishap of the Soviet education because apparently it was not taught enough about how awful capitalism is. And since I had a lot of Soviet teachers, I can also attest to the fact that many of those teachers, unfortunately, did use the approach that was more authoritarian in nature. That was very similar in the West, by the way. It was very similar all over the world. For many reasons, of course. Some of the reasons have been studied, and now we know more in the realm of pedagogy and psychology, but some reasons we're still not sure about. We're still not sure about which tools are going to harm the children and to what extent, and sometimes it may be simple words that we speak that may really impact children. It does depend on many circumstances, it appears to be. So all of the aspects of education play a role, so it's never just one single thing. It's never just the bad authoritarian teacher, because I had all of them. I had the bad authoritarian teachers, I had the more open-minded, yet very, very Soviet-inspired teachers, and I had multiple others. I had all kinds of teachers. What I could clearly see in many of them, except for the fear that I mentioned before in some of my videos, but also I could see this insecurity, this deep sense of not truly understanding what the world was about and not truly having that foothold, that foundation. And that is what I think was lacking in not only Soviet education. It is lacking right now severely all across the globe in most schools. We are lacking a foundation of education. We're lacking the tools, and the tools are dialectics. It may be a little bit scary to teach dialectics to children, but Ilyenkov actually speaks about this in one of his articles, which I will include down below. He shared that there have been studies looking at children, and when they were presented tools of dialectics, tools of questioning, tools of critical thinking, as we call it nowadays, and they were provided with environments that were conducive of learning, then the children would start learning naturally. They would start asking questions. They would not be afraid of looking at the world from all of the different sides. They would understand that quality and quantity are different. You would not need to drill children to understand certain concepts because they would, by trial and error, by being guided by caring adults, they would be able to discover many truths on their own. If you're interested, I can make a video about this article that delves a little bit deeper, just because I know I ranted and rambled a lot in this video, as I usually do. If you have a comment pertaining to the subject matter, please leave it below. Do not expect me to answer your comments because I'm a busy person with a lot of obligations. If you ask in good faith, I may try to find time to address you. Consider supporting me on Patreon or with a one-time donation, but do take care of yourselves and your local organizations first, and I hope you have a great day today, and I'll talk to you sometime later.